As a show of hands, how many of you played the game Pitfall? Anybody ever play the game Pitfall? Okay. All right. So Pitfall was a game made in 1982. Okay. That's when it was made. That was 5 years before I was born. 7 years. No. Yeah, 7 years. 7 years before I'm bad at math. That's why I preach. 7 years before I was born, and so I never got to play Pitfall except later on down the road. And I actually played a little bit of Pitfall this week. You can go to a website and you can play the whole game right on your computer. You press the space bar to jump and the arrow keys to move. And it's really, really simple. But I played for about 15 minutes. Now, Pitfall came out on the Atari 2600. And in Pitfall, you had to get Pitfall Harry, that was the character's name. You had to get Pitfall Harry through the jungle and all its perils and find all of the treasure in under 20 minutes. Okay, that's the whole point of the game. All right, and so as you're going through, it's a side scroller, so you're going across these little panes on the screen, and then once you get to the end, it'll switch to another screen. Okay, I think I played for about 15 or 20 minutes one morning this week. I think I made it to the third screen. The alligators get me every time. I don't know, something about I can't. I just I'm unable to jump on the head of the alligator, and then on the head of the next alligator, and then on the head of the next one. I can't do it. I don't know. I'm just not very good at it. And I was actually going to play it right here this morning on the screen. I was going to get Adam to play it, but Adam is a Debbie Downer, and he said that there are copyright issues or something like that. I don't know. This game's so old it might be in the public domain. I don't know, but he said that we could not play it on the screen, so blame him. Womp, womp, womp. Okay, we can't actually play a little bit today. I wanted us to play a little bit, but the whole point of this game was that there were all these obstacles, these perils. There's holes in the ground. There are scorpions that are crawling across the stage. There's alligators. There's ropes that you have to swing on. There are all of these pitfalls and obstacles and struggles and troubles in this game, and that's the whole point, is to get through them. And today, as we continue our series on family matters, on our series on the family here at Broad Street, I want us to talk about some potential pitfalls. I want us to talk about some potential pitfalls when it comes to family. Okay, now, these are going to be things that pertain to husbands. These are going to be things that pertain to wives. These are going to be things that pertain to kids, to grandkids, to grandparents, to every family relationship you can think of. You may be sitting here and you may be thinking, well, what? I don't know how this applies to me. Maybe my kids are grown. Well, I think that there will be something that each of us can look at and look introspectively and say, yeah, that's a pitfall that I have to avoid. That's something that I really need to think about and work on. And so using this game as an illustration, I want us to talk this week about some of the pitfalls that families potentially have to work on or avoid. Okay? Some of the pitfalls, some of the potential pitfalls. The first thing I can think of, you're playing this game. How is Pitfall Harry able to do all of this? Okay, how is he able to swing on vines like Tarzan, okay, and jump on top of alligators to get across a river, and jump over these logs that have spikes sticking out of them? How is he able to do all of this character? And I think about families and family relationships, and sometimes I don't think we think about the fact that it just takes work to be a family. Okay? It's very easy to start a family. It takes work to be a family. And to deal with each other's idiosyncrasies and weirdness, and just, there's just so much that goes into it, and dealing with kids and what they have going on, and dealing with your aging parents and what they have going on, and dealing with all kinds of family relationships they're hard, and it takes work. And so the first pitfall that I could think of when I was thinking about this and about the family, the first pitfall that I can think of is just a lack of training. Sometimes I just don't know that we know what it means to be a family. Sometimes there are occasions where I'm thinking, I don't really know what it means to be a good husband. I have struggled, I have failed, I have messed up. Okay? Or a lot of times as a dad, what does it look like to be a good dad? What does that look like? And so we have to train. We have to work. We have to practice. We have to discipline ourselves. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So what I wanted to do is just remind you of some of these family relationships and what the Bible calls us to do in these family relationships. Okay? So consider this just a little crash course in training. Obviously, this is not exhaustive. This is very, very minimal. But I want you to think about some of these things. I'm going to start with husbands first, okay? Because that's where I am. Before you start pointing the finger at someone else, what should you do? Point the finger at yourself first, right? Okay, so let's start with husbands. Let's think about this. The Bible and the Scriptures teach, husbands, love your wives like Christ loved the church. Love your wives like Christ loved the church. And then Paul says in Ephesians 5, he goes on to say, love your wives the way that you love yourself. Love your wives the way that you love yourself, the way that you take care of yourself. If you were going to have a day that was completely and totally self-centered and do everything you wanted to do, now take that and turn it around and point it toward your wife, and what would that look like? Husbands, love your wives. Love your wives as Christ loved the church, and love your wives like you love yourself. Dads, nurture and admonish your children. Nurture and admonish your children. Sometimes as a dad, I want to look at my kids, and there is absolutely no desire for me to nurture this child. Okay? I just want to be like, get up and go. Get up and do. Get up. I don't want to nurture. I don't want to. I want to be all about admonishment. Admonishment's good, right? Admonishment is good. Get it. Go. Get in that bed, right? Get in there and take your medicine. Go brush your teeth. Okay. I like admonishment, but nurturing. That sounds like taking care of a plant, and that's a lot of work. That sounds like you got to be gentle and you got to really work at that, and you've got to wear kid gloves. You got to nurture and admonish your children, as he says in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 3 and 4. Sometimes I think we forget that we're called to do that. We've got to train ourselves to do this. Let's think about wives now. Wives, the scriptures say, submit to and respect your husband. Submit to and respect your husband. And that in doing this, you can have a profound impact on your husband's life. It is the same today as it was in the first century. There are a lot more women who are followers of Christ than there are men. It's just the case. And the New Testament writers talk about this often, basically the idea of a wife being holy before God and helping her husband, convincing her husband that this is the best way to live. This is the best way to live. And bringing him along in Christ. Wives, you have such just an important and holy and, we'll be honest, difficult role. And wives, mothers, you can have a profound impact on your child. When Paul writes his letters to Timothy, he writes 2 letters to Timothy, 1st and 2nd Timothy, and no doubt wrote many more, but we have those 2 included in our Bibles. He wrote 1st and 2nd Timothy. When he writes these letters to Timothy, there are occasions where he discusses Timothy's upbringing and how he came to know Jesus and know the Lord and know the Scriptures. And Timothy, it seems as though Paul never mentions Timothy's father. Doesn't mention a father figure. Doesn't mention a male figure in Timothy's life. It's just his mother and his grandmother. And I read that his mother and his grandmother, Lois and Eunice, are his grandmother and his mother. Lois and Eunice are so important in the life of Timothy, this young preacher, this young minister of the gospel. And it just goes to show that mothers, that women can have a profound impact on the lives of their children, of the kids around them, of the people around them, of the relationships that they're in. Paul says, your grandmother and your mother taught you everything you needed to know. They taught you everything that you needed to know. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes the pitfall is we forget what God has called us to. Children. Okay, we have a lot of our children are in kids' story time or Power Kids right now, but we do have some of our children in here. I mean, our memory verse that we do every week right now: obey your parents in the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. For this is right. Sometimes we forget when we're talking about the family. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes kids forget. This is tough. And we've got to obey. We've got to do what they ask us to do. Now, I think the scriptures include in the Lord, because I think there are some parents that are telling their kids to do things that aren't the right thing. There are some parents who aren't doing a good job of leading their kids. And so he says, obey your parents in the Lord. In the Lord. Okay? When what they say lines up with what God says, that's where you need to be. Obey your parents in the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. Now, what about adult children? Okay? Adult children, adults who also have living parents. The scriptures are very clear that we are to honor our father and mother if we want to live a long life. Now, what that means is not little kids, saying yes, sir, and no, sir. Okay? That's not what that's talking about. Okay? I don't know how many times when I was a kid, if I didn't say yes, sir, I was, had something thrown at me and said, honor your parents, honor your father and your mother. I mean, that's not what that's talking about. That verse specifically is talking about adults taking care of their aging parents. That's what it is. It's adults taking care of their aging parents. In fact, Jesus has an encounter with some of the religious people who were shirking that duty. He says, you guys are hypocrites because you've gone and you've told your parents, well, I can't take care of you, mom and dad, because what I would use to take care of you, I'm going to give it to the Lord. I'm going to put it in the collection plate at church. He says, look, you have completely and totally gone outside of your duties as a person. Think about that. Sometimes I think that we forget. Sometimes I think that we forget, and we've got to have that training. We've got to be reminded. And he says, this is how you live a long life and a happy life, because not honoring your parents under the law of Moses, you know what happened if you didn't honor your parents, if you didn't take care of them? They'd kill you. They would throw rocks at your head until you were dead. This is important stuff. What about our family that happen to be in struggles? Like, what about widows? What responsibility do we have to our family who are widows or widowers? Who've lost their loved one, or lost someone in their family who normally would be able to take care of them. Families have the first order of responsibility to widows in their family. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 4. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes I think we forget as grandparents, that they can have a profound impact on their grandchild the way that Lois, Timothy's grandmother, had on him. I'm not going to include all of our relationships here, but all of us, whatever the relationship is, husband, wife, kid, grandparent, great-grandparent, aunt, uncle, cousin, we all have a role to play. We all have something that we need to do to make the family work. And if we don't know what to do, if we don't know how to act, if we don't know how to be, that's a lack of training. And we're going to fall into a pit when it comes to those relationships. Lack of training. That's the first pitfall that I could think of. The second one, I think, is probably distractions. The second one is distractions. Now, when I was playing Pitfall, there's this one screen where you have to jump up and grab onto a vine and swing across this pit, okay? But as you're swinging across this pit, there are these spiky logs that are coming down on the ground. And if you jump off of the swing and hit the logs, you lose points on your score. Okay? So you can become distracted with the timing of swinging on the vine and not actually land in the right place whenever you come off. Okay? And I think about this in terms of family and distractions. Distractions, I think this is the number one pitfall. Distractions are the number one pitfall. Remember our lesson from last week. Remember the most important thing when it comes to the family, the most important thing is that we are connected to God. Remember, John 15, verses 4 and 5, abide in me, Jesus says, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, and you are the branches. Whoever abides in me, and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. The most important thing is that we are connected to God, that our families are connected to him, because he is our life source. He is our creator. He is the one who created us, and he is the one that knows what's best for us. And disconnecting ourselves from him or distancing ourselves from him, that's a problem. And the way that happens, that we distance or disconnect ourselves from God, is distraction. And in the Bible, the way the Bible talks about this is idolatry. Idolatry. It's distraction. That's what it is. It's distraction. I mean, today we're not making little statues of people and bowing down before them, but we have all kinds of things that distract us, that take our eyes off of the prize, that take our interests and our energy and take them off of the important things. Distractions, I think, are the biggest pitfall. They are the biggest pitfall. I want you to listen to Jeremiah chapter 2, verses 11 through 13. Jeremiah 2, 11 through 13. Has a nation changed its gods, even though they are no gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which does not profit. Be appalled, O heavens, at this. Be shocked, be utterly desolate, declares the Lord, for my people have committed two evils. My people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that can hold no water. We've talked about this passage before here, but in Jeremiah, we are painted a beautiful image, word picture, or really a tragic word picture here. Okay? Imagine someone... just imagine yourself. Imagine that you are thirsty, okay? I mean, you are so thirsty. I mean, you guys can think of a time when you were just you were so thirsty that you just gulped and like an insane amount of water because you were so thirsty, okay? Imagine you are those kinds of levels of thirsty, and you really need some water. You really need something to drink, and so you're outdoors and you're looking around, and over here is this beautiful spring of water. It's clear. It's cold. It's running. It's not stagnant. I mean, it's pristine and it's perfect. Okay? And you see that spring of water, but then you kind of look up the hill a little bit, and you look up and you see this river that goes uphill, and you would rather go eat or go drink water from this mud puddle. Okay? So you're like, oh man, that muddy water, it looks so good, right? Right? I mean, don't y'all think so? Muddy water? It's just like it just looks so tasty, and like there's some bugs floating around in it, and it's been sitting there still. It's kind of stagnant a little bit, and it's like it's kind of yellow. Okay, it's kind of yellow. Maybe you're in Georgia, so it's just like covered in pollen, so it's yellow and covered in top, and you're like, I want that water. I want that water that's been sitting there, that's yellow, that's covered in pollen, that's stagnant. That's the water that I want. All the while, there's a spring of clear, clean water right over here. That's what God says God's people did when they committed idolatry. When they made these idols, when they built these statues, when they went after the idols of the people of the land, that's what they were doing. He was saying, look, you've got a spring, a fountain of living water right here, and instead you've gone and you've made a mud puddle so you can drink from a mud puddle. That's what you've done. Instead of choosing God, the living God, you've gone off and committed idolatry. Now that may seem silly to us, but when we get distracted, when we let everything come in our lives and get us distracted, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We have any baseball players in here? People who love to play baseball growing up? Anybody? Okay. 3 of you? No, that's weird. No. All right. Okay. It's got to be more than that. Okay. Man, y'all, you don't watch movies. You don't play baseball. You don't. All right. I'm talking about video games, and you're looking at me like I'm from a foreign country. Okay, all right. So I played baseball when I was little, and I was terrible at it. And the reason that I was terrible at it, well, besides the obvious that I'm unathletic and just kind of goofy, I was terrible at baseball because I got distracted all the time. I would play outfield because that's where they put the kid that can't do anything. No offense if you're an outfielder. I mean, it's just that's where they put me. Because when you're little, they can't. No one hits it to the outfield unless Braden's out there. He's like 6 feet tall when he's 8 years old, and he's cranking home runs. But they put me out in the outfield because the ball's never going to come to me out there. Okay, so the unathletic kid's taken out of the picture. But even if the ball did come out there, I wouldn't have gotten it because you know what I was doing? I was either digging in the dirt, looking for worms, or I was looking at airplanes in the sky. I'm just like this. That ball would have just fallen right in my mouth because I'm just looking up at the airplanes. I was terrible because I was distracted. Sometimes, y'all know I like to watch movies. I've watched movies my whole life. It's been kind of a thing that I do. Sometimes there have been moments in my marriage where I would say, hey, Kristen, we're going to watch this movie because it's a good movie, okay? And it was a good movie. It's a good movie. We're going to watch this movie. And so we'll get into the movie. She doesn't do this anymore because I've talked about this, and she knows that it's like, this is the worst. But we would watch this movie. We get about 20 minutes into the movie, and I'll hear Kristen say, I don't get this movie. And lo and behold, I pivot my head to the side, right, and do like a little side glance, and guess what she's doing instead of watching the movie? She's on her phone. Or she's folding clothes. Or, something like that. And I'm like, no wonder you don't understand the movie. You don't like the movie because you are watching the movie. Okay? You're distracted. And this is the way I watch movies. No. If you're going to watch the movie. Pay attention to it. Listen to what's being said. We can't get distracted. And there are a lot of distractions. Okay? Money can become a distraction. Entertainment can become a distraction. Technology can become a distraction. Education, recreation. None of those things are bad things. Those are good things. In fact, we should view those things as gifts from God. But what Satan is good at doing is he's good at taking God's gifts and twisting them a little bit to make them distractions. Distractions are one of the greatest pitfalls that we have to look out for. I don't know where your family is or what's going on, but you might want to consider the distractions that you have that maybe take your eye off of the most important thing. Number 3, enemy traps. Enemy traps. You're playing Pitfall and you're Pitfall Harry and you're wondering who on earth is making these spiky logs go across the screen at Pitfall Harry. Someone is out there, some cosmic weird, I don't know, monkey, I don't know. Someone is out there in this video game throwing these logs at Pitfall Harry. There's someone setting traps, digging these holes, and there's someone out there doing this. And it is true that there's someone out there who wants to trap your family. They want to throw things at your family that they feel like you can't handle or that you can't deal with. Our scripture reading this morning was 2 Timothy 2:24-26. The Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, patiently enduring evil, correcting his opponents with gentleness. God may perhaps grant them repentance, leading to a knowledge of the truth, and they may come to their senses and escape from the snare of the devil after being captured by him to do his will. The devil is setting snares. He's setting traps. And he loves to set traps in families. He loves to set traps in families. He set a trap in my family when I was 9 years old. He set a trap in my family. My family was torn apart. I watched both of my parents get torn apart in their marriage. And I watched my dad lose about 75 pounds. In depression. He stopped eating and was just, it was a bad time. It was a bad time when I was 9 years old. And Satan absolutely, positively, without a doubt, set a trap in my family. And it took a long, long time for us to recover. It took a long time for me to recover. And Satan is setting traps in families as we speak. He is trying to tempt us. He wants husbands to have wandering eyes and think that somehow, for some reason, the grass is greener on the other side. He wants wives to nag and put their husbands down and wear their husband down to the point where he just can't handle it anymore. He wants parents to be exhausted and irritable from working and parenting and just not want to do it anymore and just say, do whatever. He wants children to think that their friends' opinions matter more than their parents' rules. That's what he wants. He wants siblings to be angry and jealous and squabble amongst themselves. And there are so many more. We've got to watch out for the enemy traps. And he also uses trials. He also uses the difficulties that we go through in life. Maybe they're not a temptation, but they're a trial. They're a hard time that you're getting through, that you're going through, that just makes you want to stop, to give up, or makes you want to be distracted with something. In fact, in the gospel accounts, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, often the diseases that people have are linked. The diseases and disabilities and injuries that people have are often linked with demonic activity. Okay? They're often linked with demonic activity. The idea that Satan, I'm not saying that every one of us, every time we stub our toe, we've got a demon in us. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want you to think that. But the idea that Satan is actively trying to throw things in our lives that make it difficult to be the family that God wants us to be. He is actively trying to do that. We've got to watch out for those traps. We've got to watch out for those traps and recognize them and call them out whenever they happen. The next thing that I was thinking about that would be a pitfall for families is the idea of being a lone wolf, of thinking that you are on an island somewhere. Okay? Of thinking that you don't have any help and there's no one to help you, and that there's no possible way that you can do this thing called family, that you can do this thing called parenting, that you can do this thing called marriage. There's no way that you can do this because you are on your own, and I want you to know that that is just not true. I want you to know that that is just not true. We're not going to read all of 1 Corinthians 10, 6 through 13. I want you to go back and read it. But I want you to listen to the last couple verses. Verse 12, 1 Corinthians 10, verse 12. Therefore, let anyone who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. I think probably the best way to understand that verse is, let anyone who thinks he stands alone take heed lest you fall. Okay? Think about this. If you think that you're standing alone and you don't have any help, you need to stop and wait a minute, because that is the moment that you're going to fall. When you think that you're standing alone, that's the moment you're going to fall. Listen to verse 13. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation he will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it. You are not on an island. You're not by yourself. You're not alone. You are not. Listen to Hebrews 13, verses 5 and 6. Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have, for he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we can confidently say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me? The Lord is with me. I will not fear. We're not alone. We have God's family to help us get through these things. We have God's help. We are not alone. You are not in this by yourself. You are not Pitfall Harry off in a weird jungle by yourself. You're not alone. And then the final pitfall, as we conclude things this morning, running out of time. Running out of time. I want to encourage you to download an app on your phone. If you have a smartphone, I've talked about this app before. There's an app called Parent Q, C-U-E, Parent Q. And Parent Q is a Christian parenting app that's very helpful. It has lots of things in it, and I want to encourage you to have it. But one of the things that Parent Q does is it has you put your kid's birthday in there. Okay, you make a little profile for your child, and you put your child's birthday, and it tells you exactly how many days or weeks, I can't remember if it's days or weeks, but it tells you how much time you have left until they graduate high school and move out. And maybe you're on the my kid will live with me till 30 plan. I don't know, and maybe you have a lot more. That's a thing sometimes. I don't know, but the traditional time when kids come to be 18, 19 years old and move away and kind of do their own thing, it tells you how much time you have left, and you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I mean, with Ella, we're more than a quarter of the way through the time that we have with her. We're a third of the way through the time we have with her. She's 6. She's going to turn 6 on Wednesday. She's 6 years old, and we're like 1/3 of the way through of the time we have with her before she's going off, doing her own thing. Running out of time. Paul says, Ephesians 5, look carefully then how you will walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of time because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Making the best use of time because the days are evil. We got to know that we're running out of time. That clock is clicking down. We have so many days with our families. We have so many days with our grandparents. So many days with our great-grandparents. Kristen, when we drive to Kristen's parents' house, we pass the cemetery where her grandmother and grandfather are buried. And every time we pass by it, our girls for some reason, they're just very observant when we drive. I don't know why. They look at their surroundings. They know where they are. And so every time we pass by that cemetery, they'll say something from the back of the car. Mom, isn't that where your grandma and grandpa are buried? And Kristen, she tears up every time because they didn't get to know them. They didn't get to know their great-grandparents on Kristen's mom's side of the family. And they were wonderful people, just fantastic people. And I wish they could have known them. We are running out of time. The time is now. In Pitfall, you have 20 minutes to get through the jungle. We've got a set amount of time with the ones that we love, with our families. And God wants us to work on those. And there is no time like the present. So I want to encourage you to work on your family. I want to encourage you to work on your family, whatever that looks like. Maybe you're in a stage where focus on your grandkids is what's important. Maybe you're on the stage where you're a newlywed, or you're going to be a newlywed, or I don't know what it is, but work on your family. And let's avoid these potential pitfalls by starting our family training now, by being aware of all the good things in life that can become distractions if we let them, by knowing that the enemy is setting traps for us as we speak, by understanding that we are not in this alone. We have help. And by taking seriously that we only have so much time with our families. And I realize this lesson is kind of this lesson scares me when I think about these things. It scares me. Because it's all about traps, it's all about pitfalls, it's all about struggles, and it scares me. And I was sitting here thinking, I'm going to freak people out, I'm going to worry people. And I want you to know, if you are worried about this, if you're worried about your family, if you're worried about parents bringing up your kids, if you're worried about your marriage, if you're worried about your family in any way, I want you to remember that God gives grace to the humble, but resists the proud, by sheer fact that you are concerned about it. By sheer fact that this is something that enters your mind and you're concerned about it, and you don't want this to be a problem, and you want to do a good job, by sheer fact of that shows that you are humble, and you want to do what's right, and you want to make changes, and you want to work on your family. And guess what? God gives grace to the humble. So don't be worried. We're not going to be perfect. There are things we're going to do that might mess up our kids. There are things that we do that might hurt our spouse's feelings. We're going to struggle and we're going to fail, but don't worry. God gives grace to the humble. So today, if you are someone who knows, I've got to work on my family. I've got to work on my family. I'm one of those. Got to work on my family. Okay, I got to be a nurturer. I got to do that. Got to work on my family. I want you to know it's going to be okay. God gives grace to the humble. Let's all admit our faults, our struggles, our deficiencies, and let's move forward knowing that God is forgiving us, and He's helping us, and He loves us, and ultimately He's going to take care of us. If you need something today, we want to offer you an invitation. Maybe you need to commit your life to Christ. Maybe you need to become part of the family of God, become born again into the family of God. We'd love to study with you and talk with you about that. Maybe you need to recommit your life to God. Maybe you need to say, you know what, I have forgotten my family. I have fallen into some of these pitfalls. And it's time to dig my way out. It's time to let God restore me the way that He would restore a sheep and pick me up. It's time for my shepherd to pick me up and send me on my way again. If you need something today, we want to help you. We have a tradition here. We stand and we sing a song, and if you want to respond to this message, you can come sit on one of these front pews and we'll talk with you and pray with you and do whatever we need to do. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, come talk to me privately, talk to one of our elders in the back privately. We would love to help you in whatever way that we can, because families matter. They're important. They're important to God. They're important to us at Broad Street, and we want them to be important to you. If you need something, please don't hesitate. Won't you please come as we stand and as we sing.